Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our second Thoughtful Thursday webinar. It's been a great Children's Week so far. Hope y'all have been able to attend some of the Children's Week events. On Sunday, we had our celebration of the hands. We had 37,000 hands that were sent to us that were strung up at the Capitol. So we were really excited to see all the kids' hands and all the involvement with that event. On Monday, we did have the advocacy dinner and awards ceremony, and that we had 700 attendees at that event. And then we had the advocacy awards as well. The winner for the Child's Advocate Award was Lorianne Osley. The Impact Advocate Award was awarded to Dr. Jose Dotres, and the Youth Advocate Award was awarded to Christopher Page. And then on Tuesday, for Children's Day at the Capitol, hopefully you guys were able to attend that event. We had 3,000 kids running around, and it was full of fun and celebration. And then we also had our inaugural Storybook Garden, which is a new unique ability area for children with unique abilities and sensory issues that may need a quiet space to engage and relax during all the excitement of Children's Day. So we were really excited to have the Storybook Garden event this year. On Wednesday, we had our Early Learning Leadership Breakfast, where we awarded Representative Paul Renner with the Early Learning Leadership Award. And then we had our FECAF graduates who are continuing in their advocacy journey. We had a graduation ceremony for them. And then we also had Teen Day yesterday as well. So we had two events yesterday. During Teen Day, teens just learn more about the legislative process and in-person and interactive engagement with legislators and community leaders. And today is Thoughtful Thursday, which will wrap up all of our Children's Week 2025 events. So today's webinar is using Florida Chamber data tools to drive change for children. It's going to be presented by Michaela Buchanan. She's an early learning and literacy director at the Florida Chamber Foundation. And she's going to discuss all the interactive data-driven resources and tools that the Chamber has, including the Florida Scorecard, Florida Gap Map, and the Florida Education Data Hub. So welcome, Michaela.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It has been a great Children's Week, and I know I got to participate in many of the activities. So hopefully many of you did too. I'm very excited to be with you. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started here. I shared with the team at the Children's Forum that as you have questions, I know there's a Q&A feature. Feel free to drop those in. I do not keep the chat open, so they're going to let me know if there's something that's up that I can answer as I'm going through here, but we'll also have time for some question and answers at the end. So, all right, here we go. And you guys can see my screen, okay? Yeah? Double checking with a thumbs up. Cool. All right. So first and foremost, just want to back up a little bit. Who are we? What is the Florida Chamber Foundation? What are we doing in this space? So we are the future-focused data and research engine behind the Florida Chamber of Commerce. And if you're not familiar with the Florida Chamber of Commerce, we are the statewide chamber that really unites the business community for good. That's what we like to say on the foundation team. And so here you can see all of the blue, the yellow, the green, the different entities within the chamber. We sit in that blue one, the Florida Chamber Foundation, and you can see our primary focus is really, like I said, research, the policy incubation, creating data tools that we're going to see today. And we are all laser focused on growing Florida's economy to be a top 10 global economy by 2030. We, a couple of years ago, put out the Florida 2030 Blueprint. It lays out all 6 of those pillars you just saw, 39 goals across those pillars. And today we're going to really hone in on the education ones, right? Our talent and education supply pillar, which in yellow, the early learning relevant data. So we know that everything that we do in our state, if we want to grow our economy, starts with early learning, and childcare access. Early learning access is a 2-generation workforce issue, right? It supports our workforce of today, but also prepares our workforce for tomorrow. So you'll see us doing a lot of research around that, advocacy on our government affairs team around that, and then partnering probably with many of you on the call and folks that you saw this week. So what are we going to go over? We're going to go over the scorecard as well as the gap map. And Yesterday I had the opportunity to sit with some folks from around the state, and they were telling me, how they use these tools. So throughout the, presentation, I hope it really sparks some ideas. Maybe you already are familiar with one of the tools or two of the tools. And if it's your first time, that's okay too. Ounce of Prevention Fund as an example, like they're pointing people to this data and they're saying, hey, if you want funding from us, make your case for support leveraging, the percentage of children who are living in poverty or folks who are growing up in a single parent household. So we'll get into everything that we can cover throughout our zip codes and all the opportunity metrics. But I just want you to be thinking about like, what are the actual uses of this data? Because to just share data doesn't change the lives of kids. It doesn't change our economy. It's just an awareness thing. So we're hoping that this drives action and again, inspires you to do that. I guess before I jump in, and I think I kind of already said that once, but before I really get into the data, just so you know, this is year round, the work that we do. I know Children's Week is 1 week and you all are part of the work year round as well. And so are we at the Chamber Foundation. So we have an entire umbrella of early learning and literacy work. We do things like I said, conduct research, build data tools. We build toolkits for employers. We advocate on your behalf, talk about the workforce impacts of early learning and childcare and how it's all tied together. We convene folks. So I'll end today telling you about Learners to Earners, where we're launching our newest data tool that you'll get a sneak peek of. And then, of course, we're doing lots of active public relations and messaging on what is early learning and why is it so important. Before you can, again, kind of draw the comparison back and forth between our data and then our research. We have put out a number of research projects over the last couple of months. I think I've been in the role for about a year now, and it's been a whirlwind to say the least. But our latest and greatest 3 research projects, which you'll find a lot of the data on the scorecard and gap map incorporated into, right? So if we're talking about school readiness and what that means for Florida, we're going to talk about everything from the number of children in our state to household income and why the threshold should be changed. When we talk about Florida's child care tax credit, what are the data? What's the percentage of households with working parents with children under 6? Childcare is the number 1 reason people quit their jobs. And so we're often talking about that. And then some of our newest stuff is really looking at county level data and targeting recommendations based off of county and zip code level data, because again, statewide data is one thing, county level neighborhood data is a whole other. So I'm actually going to skip this slide and the next slide. And so I'm going to jump into the scorecard. So here you can see, if you were to go to the floridascorecard.org, you would find, when you clicked on the talent supply and education pillar, this page. And it's a page that looks a little bit more like this if you were actually to click on it. And you can see here everything from kindergarten readiness, VPK completion rates. If you click on some of these gray boxes or yellow boxes, the yellow box is going to pop out a heat map or some other visual for you. So again, you can see kindergarten readiness by county, and you're just sort of comparing, all 67 of our counties. If there's a gray box, that means it's one of those Florida 2030 blueprint goals that we said we have, and we do have, and are working towards every day. So right now in Clay County, you've got 59% of kindergartners, children showing up for kindergarten ready, whereas our goal is 100% kindergarten readiness by 2030. And again, so how are we going to get there? What can we do differently? How can business be involved? That's kind of where we're headed with all of that. You may have another use for sharing, the data around VPK completion and how many children are enrolled. What does that mean for 3rd grade reading scores, right? Because we can break that down. And in fact, we do oftentimes break that down. So my next slide sort of just is to that point. So if we dug deeper underneath the scorecard, and we'll talk a little bit about how this is going to roll out in the data hub, but you can see that, VPK, early learning in general, makes a tremendous impact on kindergarten readiness, right? I wish we had better data, or more data, I should say, before VPK, so that you can see what that impact, of early learning does have on kindergarten readiness, but the gap is significant across the state. Really, no matter where you look, if a child's in VPK, they're going to be more kindergarten ready. If they didn't go to VPK, they're less. And so we're often educating legislators, business leaders about how important those types of programs are. And you can see the same thing in 3rd grade reading. So as you think about telling your story, advocating for the more funding into the system or increased capacity into the system or the workforce needs of the system. We can talk about what this means for our K-12 and beyond, and really Florida's future workforce. So I was going to pause here and just do a little bit more of I'm going to stop pausing my screen here and then share a different one so you can actually see the scorecard in action. So I recognize that it's a lot at one time, and one of the more fun things to do is to actually just go and dive right in. So hopefully you can now see the Florida scorecard, and I'm just giving myself a check that that is in fact what you guys can see now. This is where you would see all the statewide data. So everything from, again, children in poverty, high level data, and then you would click into talent, supply, and education, like I said, and you can see how the whole state's doing. And that's great. Like I said, you can click on the yellow ones. You can see the source of our data. So you can go and see, where we pulled that from, the STAR Early Literacy Assessment. And you can pull down county level data. So what I did is I did Clay because that's where I'm from. It's where my parents are educators, and you could do the exact same thing.
Michaela, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but we're not seeing that screen. We're still
Oh,
seeing the
Lord.
data visualizations available by
Okay.
county.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. All right, trying it again. There we go. Thank you. There we go. All right, so here's the scorecard. Here is state level data that I was just kind of walking you through, all the high level stuff. You can see like how many people are in Florida, the number of open jobs. We talk about this a lot at the chamber, unemployment rate, all of those things. But then you can click into talent, supply, and education, and you can see what I was showing you on that first slide. So I showed you sort of all of the education metrics at once, and you can do that too. You can click on those yellow heat maps, like I said. You can see the source of the data. And then you can also see it by county. So like I was saying, I did Clay because that's where I'm from, and where my parents are educators at. And so you can do it for any county in the state, and it will obviously change. You could do it across any of our pillar areas. So another relevant one typically for early learning is quality of life metrics, right? So what's the percentage of households that are ALICE populations? How many children are living in poverty? Free and reduced lunch metrics. You can also see what percentage of folks are spending 30% or more on their housing costs, right? So you can see if they're burdened by that. And so we think it's a great tool just to sort of compare at a really high level, like county to county, county to state. How are we doing against our blueprint goals? And if you wanted to dive deeper into your county, or compare zip code to zip code, because we know that a lot of these issues are neighborhood issues and are school-based issues, not just one community. It doesn't really tell the whole story. We could go to the Florida Gap Map, and again, stop me if you can't see the Florida Gap Map, but it should be loaded now. And we can do the same thing for many of the metrics that I just shared, but way more. So we can look at all communities, as you can tell, all 983 zip codes that are in the state of Florida that people live in. You can check out all of these different opportunity metrics. So as an example, you could see what is the percentage of children that are 3 and 4 who are enrolled in school. And you can do that for the whole state. You could also do it for just one county. So this is again Clay. And you can do it you could also do just a couple of zip codes. You can compare zip codes from across the state within one community. It doesn't really matter. It'll pull it up for you regardless of which ones you click. And then you can start to kind of, again, tell that story, right? So at a high level, we understand VPK and early learning into kindergarten, into third grade reading. But what we can start to do, when we think about like percentage of children who are 3 and 4 enrolled in school, we can then look and compare it. And when I kind of have a slide on this, like what is the percentage of children living in poverty, right? So, oh, that's all poverty. So sorry, my bad. Yeah, the number of children. So you can look at the number of children in poverty, and then you could compare that to how many of those children are in school. You could compare the percentage of poverty in general. You can look at average commute time. So how far are folks traveling from work? If you're looking at the centers maybe in a community and where access is and how far it would be for a parent to drive to that childcare center. And then if they have a doctor's appointment or it's a half day at school or whatever comes up, how long it would take them to actually get back to work. And then we can start to say, right, from the business perspective, the economic case for this, like no wonder people are reducing their work hours, or they're taking that extra half day, or they're quitting their job altogether. And there's been 280,000 of them in the last 12 months in Florida who have done that just to care for a child. And that, I think, starts to really get the attention of our legislators, of our business leaders, really, again, making the case for support on why all of these issues matter. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen on the gap map really quickly, and I'm going to reshare, hopefully the right way this time, my PowerPoint. Okay, so it's coming back. You should be able to see it now. Interrupt me if you can't. So the gap map, I showed you guys that. I showed you that you can do zip code level. We also have a third grade reading table. I didn't show you that whenever I just did the interaction. But the gap map is one thing, the zip code and root cause dashboard is a second thing, and then we have a third grade reading table. So when I said zip code by zip code or school by school, this is what I meant by school by school. So we're still in Clay County, we're in my hometown zip code, and you can see, Charles E. Bennett, which is one of the lowest performing schools, not just in Clay County, but in the state of Florida, that just 29% of third graders are reading on grade level. And again, we could go back, right? We could go back to the gap map and we can look at, the children in poverty in that zip code, the percentage of 3 and 4-year-olds enrolled in school from that same zip code. And I'm sort of circling it here as the 54%. We can start to, again, understand maybe why Charles E. Bennett students aren't doing as well as their peers in Fleming Island or Orange Park are doing in certain zip codes, because there may be an access issue. Again, you can see the commute times, right? So if a parent is leaving Green Cove and they're driving to Jacksonville, which many of them do, it's gonna take them a long time to get back to that childcare facility in the middle of the day. They may not send them at all. We know that there are the majority of households in the state of Florida, 69% of all households in the state of Florida with children under 6 have all the available caretakers in the workforce. So that means that somebody else has to be watching those children, right? So we can, again, tell that story with the gap map data. We can do it at a zip code level. We can say, okay, well, in 32073, this Orange Park zip code, almost 90% of everybody is working, with those children. Whereas in Keystone, it's a little less than 50%. So there might be more need, in our Orange Park zip code versus our Keystone zip code. And again, how do we make decisions about where a new provider might show up, or maybe with that after school program or some other sort of blend, option for families who are working and we want them to stay in the workforce. So that is really kind of some of the different metrics that I think are relevant for early learning specific, as well as our kindergarten readiness and our third grade reading. But you could take that all the way up. You can look at surrounding issues. You can look at transportation. I showed you housing cost burdensome. You can look at folks where internet access issues are a problem. If folks have digital devices, crime rates. So we really, the tool's very powerful. It depends on how deep you want to go with the data. But we hope that it does help tell a story. And what I was really excited to share with you guys today, and kind of a sneak peek version, was what's coming. So the scorecard and the gap map, again, maybe it was your first time seeing some of that. Maybe that was all repetitive and very boring, but the data hub is going to be brand new, and we're launching it in June at our Learners to Earners event, which is our Cradle to Career Workforce Solutions Summit. And this is what it looks like. So when you would come on our landing page right now in this iteration, and there's 4 different interactive dashboards. So what we love about the scorecard and how visually appealing it is with the red tiles to show you that you're doing really great. And the the green tiles, yeah, and the red tiles to tell you that maybe you're not going in the right direction. And then as well as like the gap map, what we love about the gap map goes down to the zip code level, it goes down to the school level. It helps us break down the story that, oh, well, 59% of third graders in Clay County can read, but only 29% can do so at Charles E. Bennett. So again, we can tell that story. So the data hub is really exciting because we're going to have data like this at the county level. So we'll be able to show What are childcare costs as a percentage of median household income? What is the actual number as it relates to median household income for one child, for multiple children, from all care levels? So whether you're an infant or your child is a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or they're school aged, we can actually tell you what it is for every single county. We're doing the same thing in again as a percentage of a share. So you can see like in Palm Beach County, that's 17% of somebody's income as a household going to just care for one infant in a center. There is home-based information as well. So family childcare homes, you can also see and kind of compare that. We don't call that out directly because we're not trying to, do any pitting. We just want folks to understand really how affordability is a driving issue and a barrier for a lot of families in the state of Florida right now as it relates to accessing quality early learning opportunities for their kids, which again, we talk about all the time as critical for us to accomplish any of other goals that we have in Florida. And then if you think about our scorecard, which that's a scorecard tile right there, housing cost burden, someone could use our data hub to see, in Palm Beach, they're paying 17% of their household income on one infant. And then they're also paying, I'm making this up, but they're paying, 50%, most of them paying at least 50% of their income on housing. So now we're paying 67% on housing and childcare for one kid. And again, we can start to say, and we wonder why people make these harder decisions about quitting their job or reducing their work hours or all of the other sort of anecdotes that we hear about how people are accessing benefits that maybe aren't the best for the child or best for the family in the long run. Also something that we're going to have, which we're pretty excited about, again, just kind of telling the story county by county, how many children, might need care because everybody is working, right? All of their caretakers are in their workforce. So you can see in Franklin, it's 93%. I will tell you that in every county in the state of Florida, it is above 60% of parents are working. And so somebody's got to take care of that child other than they do. And, we know at a zip code level that this can, have further implications. So we're hopeful that the data hub will be really useful for folks in addition to our sort of longer standing scorecard and gap map. And it's not just early learning, which is pretty cool. We'll have K-12 data, so you can see grades by 3rd through all the way through 12th grade. You'll be able to see post-secondary information about college attainment and how much money folks are earning after they get those degrees or those credentials. And again, we're launching all of this at Learners to Earners. So we're hopeful that you can join us. We'll be in Tampa on June 24th. We'll have this sort of digital data walk, some action items for folks to be able to convene and meet folks in the region. But I hope that was a good overview for you of like all of the tools that we have, what we're doing with the tools. But I want to just stop now and sort of take questions because I think what you're going to get the most value of is not Michaela just sort of talking about how we use the data, but how you might use the data and what kind of questions or concerns do you have as you think about how you might use this tool in practice. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then if folks want to use the question and answer function, I'm happy to take questions. And I don't know, I'm not sure if I can see anything, guys. So if you want to help me with any of the questions, as they come in.
Not seeing any questions at the time.
Cool.
But yes, as Michaela mentioned, please put your question in the Q&A or in the chat box. Oh, there is a question now. It says, Sander Dominic asked, how frequently is data updated?
Yeah, it's a great question. So data is updated almost as soon as it's updated by the entity that we get the data from. So if you're looking for data on like education outcomes, so whether it's kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, your 8th grade math scores, high school graduation, those are typically updated annually by the Department of Education. So we will update them annually. We don't have access to the progress monitoring data that goes on more than that. So once a year. But the Census Bureau data, that gets updated. Some of that is monthly. So job changes are done monthly, unemployment is done monthly. We can also see a lot of the quality of life metrics, I believe, get updated annually. So we've got a couple of different, just depends on which one specifically you're asking about. But like if it comes out on Thursday, typically our stuff is done by Friday by our research team. So they're quick with that.
And then you got a couple more questions.
Oh,
The second
fun.
one is from Wendy Williams.
Uh-huh.
Asks, can we submit requests for data? For example, in Marion County, we'd like to see the difference in K readiness for our VPK students who attend full day at public schools
Mhm.
versus 3 hours at private centers.
So that specific data point, Wendy, we don't have on the data hub. What we can give you though, and then to answer your question more directly about data pools, yes, I mean, please do send, if you do have a data pool question, feel free to send that over my way. I'll make sure you guys all have my contact information, and then our research team. But what we do have access to is just kindergarten readiness by VPK completion rates. So we can tell you if a child went to VPK or not, how they did in kindergarten. So I don't have the breakdown from public versus private provider, unfortunately. And then I see a question. How do we currently share the information with the Florida legislature? So great question. In the beginning, I was kind of showing you guys some of our latest and greatest research that really, I guess, provides the narrative and the story around the data. Because, like I said, the data is here all the time. Like they could go to the scorecard anytime they want or the gap map and they could see it. But to really bring it to life and give them that actionable next step. So I'm going to use school readiness as an example. When we published the school readiness report, and talked about the percentage of children ready for kindergarten and just how many people are leaving the workforce because of childcare issues and how that's all relevant to our economy and to business community and to our K-12 system. We sent a copy of that report along with a county level one pager. They were really like two pagers, but we sent around a county level report with that to everybody on that first committee that we knew was going to see the school readiness bill. So like House Bill 859 as an example, our lobbying team sent that over and made sure everybody got it. They made sure the House and the Senate staff, particularly in the budget areas, got a copy of it and that we were available to answer questions. And then as the bills have progressed on both sides, we've continued to just offer ourselves as resources. But to be honest, I think, feel free to use our data or ask me. I mean, all 67 counties have those two pagers, I'm going to say. That's probably more fair. And I'm happy to send it. When I go to communities and do different speaking engagements or sit with a superintendent or an industry leader, I often will bring those with me because uh, how do we solve a problem if we don't even know really the context for what we're trying to solve? And so we're all just like to start from the same page. So what are we even talking about? What are we saying is the issue? And now how do these different policy, changes or procedures actually contribute to making a significant change around the metrics that we are tracking? So I hope that answers your question, but all the time in many ways, and then outside of session, we try to, do education for members. And I say we, that's the royal we. The foundation doesn't do any lobbying or really true advocacy with the big A. That's all on the Chamber of Commerce side where we have our registered lobbyists. So, but we work very closely together and they basically take what we create on the foundation team and make sure that, whether it's during session or after session, that the appropriate members are getting the relevant information to hopefully understand these issues at a more granular level, I would say. Mm. How does this relate to children in the foster system? How might it help us advocate for those children? So I'm going to go to my quality of life metrics. I actually don't think that's a good question. That I don't believe that our scorecard has foster children data in it. I will have to get back to you about if there's any other data source that I'm aware of. I don't do as much of the sort of prosperity work. That's another member of our team. Her name is Christina. Early learning and a lot of the child welfare issues obviously intersect and overlap. And so we want to make sure that, yes, if there's data on that, we are telling the story. But I'll have to get with Christina to know if I can point you in the direction specifically around foster children, because I don't think we have that anywhere on our tools. Other questions? Concerns? Things that you thought I would talk about that I didn't, or I love it. I can tell you that as we think about how we work across other organizations and with other organizations, we really try to unify our messaging, right? And I think that came out pretty strong during Children's Week that there's so many of us working together, whether it's the Association of Early Learning Coalitions or the Councils and Trust, the Children's Movement of Florida, of course, the Forum. We're all actively United Ways coming together to really be telling the same story. And so oftentimes we are looked to with our data, with our research from the chamber, to help drive the stories that you guys already know, the impact that you already know that you're having, just to give some hard facts that hopefully help break through any conversations that you're having that maybe just aren't landing the way that you'd like them to with certain members. Mm. So I see some data questions about middle school, high schoolers. So the data hub, our newer data hub, is going to have all third through 12th grade data. We'll also have kindergarten readiness data. So I think the point's well taken. It's like, third grade reading is one thing, eighth grade math's another thing. But can we actually speak to, are those students English language learners? Are they from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds? How can we break it up by gender? We know that there's some gender gap work going on in the Tampa Bay region. So the new data tool will have all of those, the math, the science, and the reading metrics disaggregated for all of those different population demographics. So we're pretty stoked about that. And hopefully that again will help target investments, right? Because if we just keep doing, sort of the same thing, or we think we understand an issue, but we're not really nailing down into that neighborhood by neighborhood, or finding solutions that helps certain, students who seem to be lagging behind, whatever that means in those communities, then we're not really going to see those kindergarten readiness numbers go up, or the third grade reading, or the eighth grade math. So I think good question, and the data hub will be doing that. Sorry, another question. So the data hub will be launched at Learners to Earners. So I'll share my screen and I'll make sure you guys have my contact information here. This is where we will be launching the data hub. And if you can make it, we'd love to have you. It's June 24th in Tampa. We'll also be doing, after the big event in Tampa, some in-person sessions around the state. We'll be kind of on our Florida Road show with that. And then depending on what organization you're with, like I just got off the phone with the education foundations in Florida and community foundations. And there are a lot of folks who are associated with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. So we're setting up webinars to go deeper into the new data hub tool, so that folks can kind of get not a first look, because you can get the Learners to Earners, but a deeper look into the new tool and how it might be relevant for you and your population that you're either serving or that you're working with. And then I'll make sure, again, like I said, you guys have my contact information, so that if you do want a data pool, if you think of something you want to know, do they have data on this? Or could they get me data on that? Even if it's not in the scorecard or the gap map, I can't promise that we can do everything, but somebody will respond to you. We have a great team of researchers and economists, and then myself. So we're happy to be helpful when we can be. If there's ever a time that, we are having events and some of this data could be helpful at that event, we're happy to share slides or resources that we've created that could be, beneficial for folks in the audience. So yeah, so there's no end to the things that we're here to be helpful with. Awesome. Okay.
Are there any final questions? If you all think of one after the webinar has concluded, please send an email to info@childrensweek.org and we'll make sure that Michaela gets that question and can answer that for you.
And again, I'll just drop, I don't know if it'd be best in the chat, but I'll make sure as you guys get resources out, I can do a copy of the deck in a PDF form. And then the two sites, the websites for the scorecard and the gap map, both are pretty straightforward at floridascorecard.org or floridagapmap.org. And it's publicly available, like I said, all the time. So you can pull it anytime you want. And if you need help on anything specific, you can just reach out to us.
And to answer your question, Colleen, yes, this webinar has been recorded and we'll send that link out to everyone who registered as soon as that's completed.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys had a great Children's Week. I hope this has been helpful. You learned something new about the data at the Florida Chamber Foundation, and that you're just as excited as I am about the new data hub coming in June, and that you'll have even more use cases for that. So reach out anytime, and thanks for joining us.
Yes, and thank you, Michaela, for helping us take a deep dive into the data to determine and tell a story about the needs of children in Florida communities and zip codes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, you guys.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a wonderful day. Thanks again, Michaela.